The halls of Westlake High School were emptying as the final bell rang on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Students rushed toward the exits, eager to begin their afternoon activities, while teachers gathered papers and prepared for the next day's lessons. The usual end-of-day chaos slowly faded into quiet as the building emptied, except for the second-floor boys' bathroom near the science labs. Ray Thompson, the head custodian who had worked at Westlake for over 15 years, pushed his cleaning cart toward the bathroom, following his usual after-school routine. He whistled softly as he propped open the door with his cart. "Hello? Anyone still in here? I'm about to clean," Ray called out, his voice echoing against the tiled walls. When no one answered, he stepped inside, expecting an empty room. Instead, his heart nearly stopped. There, crumpled on the floor between the last stall and the wall, lay a boy's motionless body. "Oh my God," Ray whispered, rushing forward. He recognized the student immediately, Aaron Johnson, a freshman who had always greeted him with a smile in the hallways. Aaron lay face down, completely still. His backpack had spilled open beside him, books and papers scattered across the wet floor. Ray knelt down, his hands shaking as he gently turned the boy over. Aaron's face was swollen, a thin trickle of blood running from his nose, his breathing shallow and labored. "Help! Somebody help!" Ray shouted, his voice booming through the empty bathroom. He pulled out his school radio. "Emergency in the second-floor boys' bathroom. Student down. Need nurse now." Within minutes, the school nurse, Mrs. Garcia, burst through the door, medical bag in hand. Her eyes widened as she saw Aaron's condition. "How long has he been like this?" she asked, dropping to her knees to check his pulse. "Don't know. Just found him," Ray said, his voice tight with worry. Mrs. Garcia worked quickly, checking Aaron's vital signs while Ray called the front office. The principal, Dr. Williams, arrived moments later, followed by the assistant principal. "I've called 911, Mrs. Garcia said, placing an emergency blanket over Aaron. "His pulse is weak and irregular. He needs a hospital immediately." Dr. Williams pulled out his phone. "I'll call his parents." His face looked grim as he stepped away, searching through student emergency contact information. The paramedics arrived within 7 minutes, their equipment clattering on the bathroom tiles as they worked to stabilize Aaron. They carefully transferred him to a stretcher, attached an oxygen mask, and rushed him through the now silent hallways. Across town, Marcus Johnson was in the middle of a business meeting when his phone vibrated. Seeing the school's number, he excused himself and stepped into the hallway to answer. "Mr. Johnson, this is Principal Williams from Westlake High. There's been an incident involving Aaron." The words that followed turned Marcus's world upside down. He barely remembered ending the call or rushing to his car. His hands trembled as he called his wife, Tanya, who was finishing her shift at the hospital, the same hospital where their son was now being taken. "They found him unconscious, Tanya," Marcus said, his voice breaking as he navigated traffic. "They don't know what happened." As Aaron was wheeled into the emergency room, doctors and nurses immediately surrounded him. No one yet knew what had happened in that bathroom, but as the hospital staff worked to save the young boy's life, a security officer at the school was already reviewing the hallway camera footage from that afternoon, footage that would soon change everything at Westlake High School forever. The emergency room buzzed with activity as doctors worked on Aaron Johnson. His parents, Marcus and Tanya, sat in the waiting area, their faces etched with worry. Tanya kept checking her phone, hoping for updates from the doctors, while Marcus stared blankly at the wall, replaying the principal's words in his mind. "Family of Aaron Johnson." A doctor in blue scrubs approached them. Both parents jumped to their feet. "Yes, that's us," Marcus said, his voice strained. "How is our son?" "Aaron is stable but still unconscious," the doctor explained. "We found evidence of blunt force trauma to his head and torso. These aren't injuries from a simple fall." Tanya gasped, covering her mouth. "Are you saying someone hurt him deliberately?" The doctor nodded grimly. "We're required to report this to the police. In fact, there's a detective who would like to speak with you." As if on cue, a woman in a dark blazer walked toward them, extending her hand. "I'm Detective Lisa Ramirez. I've been assigned to your son's case." At Westlake High School, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Yellow police tape blocked off the second-floor bathroom, and officers moved through the halls, questioning staff who had remained after school hours. Principal Williams sat in his office with the school's security officer, reviewing footage from the hallway cameras. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m., 16 minutes before the final bell. "There's Aaron." Williams pointed to the screen where Aaron walked toward the bathroom, his shoulders hunched forward, clutching his backpack tightly. "Wait, look at this," the security officer said, pointing to three larger boys who appeared in the frame moments later. "That's Jason Mercer, Tyler Wilson, and Damon King, all seniors on the football team." They watched as the three boys looked around quickly, then followed Aaron into the bathroom. The footage continued rolling, showing an empty hallway for nearly 10 minutes. Then, at 2:58 p.m., the three seniors emerged from the bathroom. Jason was laughing, Tyler was adjusting his varsity jacket, and Damon was checking his knuckles. "My God," Williams whispered, his face pale. "They were in there with him for almost 10 minutes. The security officer rewound the footage. And Aaron never came out. Back at the hospital, Detective Ramirez sat with the Johnsons in a private consultation room. "Has Aaron had any problems at school?" she asked. "Any conflicts with other students?" Marcus and Tanya exchanged a look. "He's mentioned some difficulties adjusting," Tanya said carefully, "but nothing specific." "Aaron's a quiet boy," Marcus added. "He transferred to Westlake this year. He was excited about the science program, but lately, he's been more withdrawn." Detective Ramirez made notes in her small notebook. Did he ever mention any names? Anyone who might have targeted him? Before they could answer, her phone rang. After a brief conversation, she looked at the parents with renewed intensity. The school has security footage. Three older students followed Aaron into the bathroom and left without him. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. "Who were they?" "We're bringing them in for questioning now," Ramirez said, standing up. "I'll need to take a statement from Aaron as soon as he regains consciousness." As if hearing his name, a nurse appeared at the doorway. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, Aaron is showing signs of waking up." The three rushed to Aaron's room, where he lay connected to monitors, his face bruised and swollen. His eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. "Mom? Dad?" His voice was barely a whisper. "We're here, baby," Tanya said, gently touching his hand. Detective Ramirez stayed back, giving the family a moment. She knew the case was just beginning. What had happened in that bathroom wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of something much larger that would soon rock Westlake High School to its foundation. 3 days passed since Aaron had been found unconscious in the school bathroom. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors and the occasional rustle as Tanya adjusted the flowers that had accumulated on the windowsill. Aaron's condition had improved, but his memory remained foggy. "Can you remember anything else about that day?" Detective Ramirez asked gently, sitting in a chair beside Aaron's bed. His parents watched anxiously from across the room. Aaron winced as he shifted positions. "I remember going to the bathroom between classes. I was washing my hands when they came in." "They?" Ramirez prompted. "Jason, Tyler, and Damon," Aaron said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They've been after me since the first week of school." Marcus stepped forward. "Why didn't you tell us, son?" Aaron looked down at his hands. "They said it would get worse if I told anyone." Detective Ramirez made notes while maintaining eye contact with Aaron. "We need your formal statement, but we already have some evidence. The school provided us with security footage." Across town, in the Westlake High School administration building, a tense meeting was underway. Detective Ramirez's partner, Detective Thompson, had set up a large monitor in the conference room. Present were the superintendent, the school board president, Principal Williams, and the district's legal counsel. "What you're about to see covers the past 3 months," Detective Thompson explained, clicking on his laptop. "We've compiled footage from various cameras throughout the school. The first clip showed Aaron at his locker 6 weeks earlier. As he gathered his books, Jason Mercer bumped him hard, sending Aaron stumbling into the lockers. Teachers walked by without noticing or intervening. This pattern repeats almost daily," Thompson said, advancing to another clip showing Aaron in the cafeteria, sitting alone. Tyler Wilson walked by, deliberately knocking Aaron's lunch tray to the floor. Again, staff members were present but seemed oblivious. The superintendent removed her glasses, rubbing her eyes. "How did we miss this?" "There's more," Thompson said grimly. We found footage from other incidents involving different students. The next series of clips showed similar harassment against other minority students. Books knocked down, shoulders slammed in hallways, quiet intimidation in corners where teachers should have been watching. The pattern was unmistakable. This is systematic, the school board president said, his face pale. It's not just Aaron Johnson. Thompson nodded. The bathroom incident was just the escalation point. We believe this group has been targeting vulnerable students for months. The legal counsel scribbled notes furiously. What about the staff? Why didn't anyone report this? Thompson clicked to another set of clips that caused everyone in the room to fall silent. These showed teachers witnessing incidents but walking away, administrators observing bullying from office windows but taking no action, even a guidance counselor watching as a student was harassed and doing nothing. We have reason to believe that complaints were made, Thompson said. We've interviewed several parents who say they reported bullying to administration, particularly parents of minority students. We need access to all your records. Principal Williams, who had been mostly silent, now looked ill. The reports would be in our disciplinary files, which we now have a warrant to examine, Thompson replied, sliding a document across the table. Back at the hospital, Aaron was finishing his statement to Detective Ramirez. The last thing I remember is Damon holding me against the wall while Jason hit me in the stomach. Then everything went black. Ramirez closed her notebook. Thank you, Aaron. This helps us build our case. As she left the room, her phone buzzed with a text from her partner. Found dozens of buried complaints. Superintendent is shutting down the school effective tomorrow. This goes all the way to the top. Ramirez glanced back at the Johnson family, knowing that what they had uncovered would change not just Aaron's life, but the entire Westlake community forever. The conference room at the Westlake School District headquarters was packed beyond capacity. Superintendent Gloria Martinez had called an emergency meeting with all department heads present. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife as Detective Ramirez and her partner prepared to present their findings. Before we begin, Superintendent Martinez said, her voice steady despite her obvious distress, I want to make it clear that we will cooperate fully with this investigation. What happened to Aaron Johnson should never have happened at any of our schools. Detective Ramirez nodded and dimmed the lights. The projection screen flickered to life with a timeline of events. Over the past 72 hours, we've reviewed more than 300 hours of security footage and interviewed 27 students, Ramirez began. What we found isn't just an isolated incident of bullying. It's a pattern of targeted harassment that has gone unchecked for years. She clicked to the next slide, showing a spreadsheet with dates and names, many of them highlighted in red. These red entries represent formal complaints filed by parents and students about bullying incidents. 43 complaints in the past year alone, with 32 involving minority students. Of those, only 4 received any follow-up. Principal Williams shifted uncomfortably in his seat as several pairs of eyes turned toward him. Detective Thompson took over. We've identified what appears to be a hierarchy of bullying at Westlake High. The 3 students who attacked Aaron, Jason, Tyler, and Damon, are just the most visible participants. There's an entire network of students involved in what can only be described as systematic intimidation. The next slide showed a social network diagram connecting various students across grade levels. At the center were the 3 seniors, but branching out from them were connections to at least 15 other students. The most disturbing part, Ramirez continued, is that this didn't happen in secret. Our investigation found at least 12 faculty members who witnessed incidents and failed to report them. The room erupted in whispers and shocked gasps. Meanwhile, across town at Memorial Hospital, Aaron was sitting up in bed for the first time, speaking with a child psychologist. The bruising on his face had faded from purple to a sickly yellow-green. Can you tell me when the bullying first started? Dr. Chen asked gently. Aaron looked down at his hands. The first day of school, I answered a question in AP Biology that Jason got wrong. After class, he told me to know my place. And it escalated from there? Aaron nodded. At first it was just comments. Then they started knocking my books down, tripping me in the hallway. About a month ago, they cornered me in the locker room and told me that smart black boys like me were the worst kind. Dr. Chen made notes while maintaining a compassionate expression. Did you tell anyone? I tried, Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. I told Mr. Peterson, my English teacher, after they stole my essay and tore it up. He said boys will be boys and I needed to toughen up. Aaron paused. I told Assistant Principal Webb when they started following me between classes. She said without proof, there was nothing she could do. Back at the district meeting, Ramirez was showing email exchanges they'd recovered from the school servers. This email from Assistant Principal Webb to Principal Williams acknowledges Aaron's complaint but dismisses it as, quote, another case of oversensitivity that would resolve itself, Ramirez said. There are dozens of similar exchanges. The superintendent's face had gone from concern to horrified. How widespread is this negligence? Based on our preliminary investigation, Thompson replied, we believe this culture of indifference exists throughout Westlake High, possibly extending to other schools in the district. The pattern suggests that complaints from certain students, particularly minorities, were routinely sidelined. As the meeting continued, local news vans began gathering outside the district building. The story of Aaron Johnson had already made the evening news, but what no one yet realized was that tomorrow's headlines would reveal a scandal that would shake the entire community to its core. The headline of the Westlake Tribune screamed across the front page, Systematic Bullying Exposed Date, School Officials Ignored. Below it was a photo of Aaron Johnson in his hospital bed, his parents standing beside him with determined expressions on their faces. By 8 a.m., the sidewalk outside the school district offices was packed with protesters, parents, community leaders, and students holding signs that read Justice for Aaron and Who was protecting our children. Local TV crews jostled for position as Marcus and Tanya Johnson arrived for a meeting with the superintendent. Inside the building, Superintendent Martinez sat with her crisis management team, reviewing the latest findings from Detective Ramirez's investigation. The record search we completed last night is damning, the district's legal counsel explained, sliding a thick folder across the table. We found over 100 bullying complaints from the past 3 years that were marked as resolved in the system but never actually addressed. Martinez flipped through the pages, her expression growing darker with each one. These are organized by race, she observed, noticing a pattern in the colored tabs. Yes, the lawyer confirmed. Complaints from Black and Hispanic students were 3 times more likely to be dismissed without investigation than those from white students. A knock at the door interrupted them. The Johnsons are here, her assistant announced. Marcus and Tanya Johnson entered the room, followed by their attorney, a stern woman in a charcoal suit. The tension in the room increased tenfold. Thank you for coming, Martinez began, but Marcus cut her off. We're not here for pleasantries, he said firmly. We're here because the system that was supposed to protect our son failed him in every possible way. Tanya placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. The screen showed Aaron, still in his hospital bed, looking directly at the camera. This started on my first day at Westlake. Aaron's voice was soft but clear. When I told teachers what was happening, they ignored me. When my mom called the school, they said I was exaggerating. Yesterday, a 7th grader came to visit me. He's being bullied by the same group. Nothing has changed even after what they did to me. Martinez closed her eyes briefly as the video ended. I want you to know we're taking immediate action. Principal Williams and Assistant Principal Webb have been placed on administrative leave, pending. That's not enough, Tanya interrupted. This isn't about 2 administrators. This is about a culture that decided some children aren't worth protecting. Across town, Detective Ramirez was interviewing Jason Mercer, the ringleader of the group that had attacked Aaron. Jason's father, a prominent local businessman, had brought the family's attorney. We understand this is a serious situation, the attorney began, but Jason is a minor with no prior record. He's set to graduate in 2 months with a football scholarship too. Your client put another student in the hospital, Ramirez cut in sharply, and our investigation indicates this wasn't an isolated incident. She placed photographs on the table, screenshots from various security cameras showing Jason and his friends harassing different students. We've identified 17 victims so far, Ramirez continued. All subjected to consistent harassment, most of them minorities. This wasn't bullying, Mr. Mercer. This was systematic intimidation that the school allowed to happen. Jason shifted uncomfortably, looking at his father. The district attorney is considering charging these as hate crimes, Ramirez added, watching Jason pale visibly. Meanwhile, at a hastily called school board meeting, the board president addressed a room packed with angry parents. Effective immediately, Westlake High School will be closed while we conduct a thorough investigation, he announced over shouts and questions. All students will transition to remote learning for the next 2 weeks. We've also requested a civil rights investigation from the Department of Education. As the announcement was made, Aaron Johnson was being discharged from the hospital. Though his physical wounds were healing, the wider wound to the community was only beginning to be exposed. A festering institutional failure that had been ignored for far too long. The morning after the school board's announcement, Westlake High School stood eerily silent. Yellow police tape blocked the main entrance, and a sign posted on the front doors read, "CLOSTD until FLRTG notice." 2 police officers stood guard, turning away confused students who hadn't heard the news. News vans lined the street, reporters doing live broadcasts with the school building as their backdrop. The story had spread beyond local coverage. A national morning show had just finished interviewing Marcus and Tanya Johnson via satellite. "This isn't just about our son anymore," Marcus had told millions of viewers. "This is about every child who went to school afraid and whose cries for help were ignored." Inside the empty school building, a team of investigators moved methodically through the hallways. They photographed locations mentioned in bullying reports, collected records from the guidance office, and interviewed staff members who had agreed to cooperate. In the central office, Detective Ramirez sat across from Coach Brewer, the athletics director who had supervised Jason, Tyler, and Damon on the football team. "Did you ever witness these boys behaving aggressively toward other students?" Ramirez asked. Coach Brewer shifted uncomfortably. "They're competitive kids. That's what makes them good athletes." "That's not what I asked," Ramirez said firmly, placing a folder on the table. "We have statements from 4 teachers who say they reported concerns about these boys to you directly. One email specifically mentions you saying, and I quote, 'Boys need to work out their own problems.'" The coach's face reddened. "You don't understand the pressure these kids are under." "No, I understand perfectly," Ramirez replied. "You protected your star athletes at the expense of students like Aaron Johnson." Across town at the district's administrative building, Superintendent Martinez faced a roomful of angry parents. The emergency meeting had been called to explain the district's response plan, but it quickly turned into a public airing of grievances. "My daughter reported bullying 3 times last year," one mother shouted. "Nothing was ever done." "My son transferred out because no one would help him," called another parent. Martinez raised her hands, trying to restore order. "Please, we want to hear all of your concerns. That's why we've set up this special email address and hotline. Every report will be investigated by an independent team." A tall man in the back stood up. "My son is black and on the honor roll. He's been called names, had his projects sabotaged, and was even followed home once. When I came to the school, Principal Williams told me my son needed to adapt to the culture. Is that the culture you're investigating?" The room erupted again. Meanwhile, in the Johnson household, Aaron sat at the kitchen table, reading through messages of support on his phone. Friends from his old school had created an online support page that had already gathered thousands of followers. "How are you feeling about all this?" Tanya asked, placing a sandwich in front of him. Aaron looked up. Scared, relieved. "I don't know." He paused. "Some kids from school messaged me to say they're sorry they never helped. They were afraid of becoming targets too." Tanya sat beside him. "That's why this has to change. Fear shouldn't rule a school." Aaron's phone buzzed with a news alert. 3 Westlake administrators resign as investigation widens. At the police station, Jason, Tyler, and Damon sat in separate interview rooms with their parents and lawyers. The district attorney had just announced that all 3 would be charged as juveniles with assault and battery. Additionally, due to evidence of targeting minority students, hate crime enhancements were being considered. Jason's father pounded the table. "This is ridiculous. They're just teenagers." The district attorney remained calm. Teenagers who put another teenager in the hospital after months of harassment that was documented and ignored. By evening, the story had reached national proportions. Social media was flooded with hashtag Justice for Aaron hashtags and similar stories from schools across the country were emerging. What had begun as one unconscious boy in a high school bathroom had exposed a nationwide conversation about bullying, race, and institutional complicity. As darkness fell over the empty Westlake High School building, an impromptu candlelight vigil formed on the front lawn. Hundreds of community members gathered, their lights forming a beacon that signaled both the failure of the past and a commitment to a different future. 2 weeks after the school's closure, the Westlake Community Center buzzed with activity. The large meeting room had been transformed into a temporary courtroom for juvenile proceedings. Outside, reporters waited behind barriers, while inside, Aaron Johnson sat with his parents and their attorney. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Eleanor Carter entered the room. This was the third and final day of hearings for Jason, Tyler, and Damon. Unlike adult proceedings, these juvenile hearings were closed to the press, but the outcome would soon be public knowledge. Judge Carter settled behind the bench and addressed the room. "This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony in the matter of the assault on Aaron Johnson. I have also considered the broader pattern of behavior established by the prosecution." She looked directly at the 3 teenagers. "Stand, please." The boys rose slowly, their faces pale and serious, a stark contrast to the laughing expressions caught on the security cameras weeks earlier. "Jason Mercer, Tyler Wilson, and Damon King, this court finds you responsible for the assault on Aaron Johnson. Additionally, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of targeted harassment against multiple students." Judge Carter's voice was firm but not unkind. "As juveniles, your primary sentence will focus on rehabilitation, not punishment." She detailed their sentences: 2 years of probation, mandatory counseling, community service at organizations serving minority youth, and educational programs on bias and harassment. Additionally, they would each write personal apology letters to every student they had targeted. "Make no mistake," Judge Carter concluded, "had you been adults, you would be facing years in prison. I hope you understand the seriousness of your actions and the harm you've caused." As the courtroom emptied, Marcus put his arm around Aaron's shoulders. "How do you feel, son?" Aaron watched his former bullies leaving with their parents. "I don't know. I wanted them punished, but I also want them to learn and change." Tanya squeezed his hand. "That's very wise of you." Across town at the district offices, a different kind of justice was unfolding. Superintendent Martinez sat at a conference table with the newly appointed Oversight Committee, a diverse group of parents, teachers, and community leaders. "The independent investigation is complete," she announced, distributing thick folders. "It confirms systematic failures at multiple levels. In addition to the 3 administrators who resigned, we've identified 12 staff members who repeatedly failed to report or address bullying incidents." A committee member, Ms. Ruiz, looked up from the report. "What actions are being taken?" 4 teachers have been placed on administrative leave pending termination hearings. 8 others will undergo mandatory retraining and probationary supervision, Martinez explained. "But more importantly, we're implementing structural changes." She unveiled the district's new Safe Schools initiative that included anonymous reporting systems, mandatory response protocols, regular climate surveys, and an independent ombudsman to handle complaints that weren't adequately addressed. "We're also revamping our hiring and training," Martinez continued. "Every staff member will complete cultural competency and anti-bullying certification before the new school year." Back at the Johnson home that evening, Aaron sat at his desk, working on a website. Since the incident, he had become the reluctant face of a growing movement. With the help of some tech-savvy friends, he was creating an online platform where students could share their experiences and find resources. "Dinner's ready," Marcus called from downstairs. As Aaron headed to the kitchen, his phone buzzed with a text message from a number he didn't recognize. "Hi Aaron, this is Miguel from Westlake. I never spoke up when they came after you, and I'm sorry. I was scared. Your courage is helping a lot of us find our voices." Aaron smiled slightly. It was the 5th such message he'd received that week. At dinner, Tanya shared news from her meeting with the school board. They'd approved funding for a district-wide anti-bullying program, and they want you to help design it, Aaron, if you're willing. Aaron considered this as he served himself salad. The scars on his arms were fading, but the memories remained vivid. Still, Something was healing inside him, something stronger than before. "I think I'd like that," he finally said. "Someone needs to make sure this doesn't happen again." As they ate dinner together, a special report on the evening news announced that 3 more school districts in the state had begun reviewing their anti-bullying policies in response to the Westlake case. What had started with one unconscious boy was now sparking change far beyond the walls of a single school. 6 months had passed since the day Aaron Johnson was found unconscious in the Westlake High School bathroom. The early spring sunshine warmed the newly installed benches in the school's courtyard as students moved between classes. The building looked the same from the outside, but inside, almost everything had changed. New signs hung in every hallway: "Speak up, stand up, and all students safe, all voices heard." Security cameras now had bright blue lights indicating they were actively monitored, and teachers stood visibly at hallway intersections during class changes. In the main lobby, a large display case held newspaper clippings chronicling the events that had transformed the school, alongside information about the new anti-bullying programs. At the center was a framed photo of Aaron Johnson standing with the district's new Student Safety Committee. Aaron himself was no longer a student at Westlake. After careful consideration, his parents had enrolled him in Riverside Academy across town, where he was thriving in their advanced science program. Though the physical distance separated him from Westlake, his influence remained strong. "We'll be implementing the final phase of the Johnson Protocol next week," announced Principal Diana Chen, who had replaced the disgraced former administration 4 months earlier. She addressed the faculty gathered in the library for their weekly meeting. "Remember, this isn't just about checking boxes. This is about creating a culture where every student feels safe." The Johnson Protocol, named in honor of Aaron, had become a model being adopted by schools throughout the state. Its comprehensive approach included clear reporting procedures, mandatory response timelines, and accountability at every level. Across town at Riverside Academy, Aaron stood before his science class, presenting his research project on stress hormones and their effects on teenage brain development. "My research shows that chronic stress from bullying can actually change brain chemistry," he explained confidently, pointing to his display board. "But positive intervention can reverse these effects." His science teacher, Ms. Patterson, nodded approvingly. The personal connection to his research topic went unspoken, but understood by everyone in the room. After school, Aaron headed to the community center where he led a weekly support group for bullying victims. What had started as a small gathering of 5 students now regularly attracted 15 to 20 young people from schools across the district. "I still have nightmares sometimes," shared a 7th grade girl named Zoe. "The same kids who bullied me are still at my school, even though they're supposed to be on probation." Aaron nodded understanding. "The systems aren't perfect yet. That's why we need to stick together and keep speaking up." At the state capitol, Marcus and Tanya Johnson stood behind the governor as he signed the Safe Schools Act into law. The legislation, largely inspired by Aaron's case, required all schools in the state to implement comprehensive anti-bullying programs with specific protections for minority students and other vulnerable groups. This bill would not exist without the courage of one family who refused to let their son's suffering be forgotten, the governor said, handing the signing pen to Tanya. That evening, the Johnson family gathered around their dinner table with Detective Ramirez, who had become a friend during the months of investigation and hearings. "I have some news," she told them, accepting a plate from Marcus. "Jason Mercer completed his restorative justice program. His counselor says he's showing real growth. He's been speaking at middle schools about the harm bullying causes." Aaron absorbed this information silently, then nodded. "That's good. That means something positive came from all this." Later, as Aaron prepared for bed, he noticed an email notification on his phone. It was from the National Education Conference where he had been invited to speak next month. They wanted to know if he could join a panel discussion with other young activists who were changing school culture around the country. As he replied with his acceptance, Aaron glanced at the small scar above his eyebrow, a permanent reminder of that day in the bathroom. But now, instead of triggering fear, it reminded him of his purpose. From one unconscious boy to a nationwide movement, the story had become much bigger than himself. And in that transformation, Aaron had found not just healing, but hope.